lunch session. If you aren't planning on learning about customer IQ, we've already closed the plane doors. You're going to Charlotte anyway. So we have a wonderful panel here, but I'm not going to even try to introduce this group. I'm going to leave it up to Mark because he knows it much better than I. Mark, though, has been instrumental in this.
You need the mic, sir.
I need the mic, right. I'm just going to turn it over to Mark. Mark's been involved in this thing since we got it started. So, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody, to Customer IQ, the new imperative. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Regional Vice President and Executive Data Leader for Fusion Alliance. And we have a great panel here today that is going to share some really good wisdom on digital transformation and how the focus on the customer can be amplified through data in the marriage of data with digital. So without any further ado, I'm going to start with Chris and ask Chris to go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Chris Tambos, VP of Data and Analytics for Fortune Brands Water Innovations, formerly known as Global Plumbing Group. Water Innovations is a little bit better, I think. So let's see. Water Innovations is known for their brands such as Moen. If you all have ever used a Moen faucet or shower head or Moen products. We're also known for our luxury products, which are out of the house of Rohl, out of North America and Europe. And more recently, smart products for water. So smart shower head, smart faucets, but also smart water security using AI to protect your home from leak damage. Good to be here today.
Great, thank you. Saj?
Hopefully my mic works well. Everybody can hear me okay? All right, good. I'm Sajid Patel. I lead a data practice for Fusion Alliance. I'm going to have Dave speak to Fusion Alliance as a whole, but I'll speak about data practice that we have. So the way we look at our practices is we're kind of holistic on the whole data management lifecycle. So we do a lot of work on strategy work. A lot of clients that we work with are early in their journey. They don't have a data strategy established or are very immature on some of the data management functions like governance, stewardship, metadata management. So we'll help a lot on that side of the strategic side. Solutioning, we help a lot of clients kind of rationalize architecture and technologies, especially moving to modern architectures. So we kind of play in that space a lot, helping them make decisions that are pragmatic in their environment, and then helping them kind of stand up those foundations. And then on the delivery side, just doing the whole execution, right? So once you stand up a foundation, you want to prove some use cases, and then kind of build a backlog of capabilities on those platforms. And that's really what we do from the delivery side. So that's all on the data side.
Good afternoon. I'm David Levine. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy for Fusion. I've been with Fusion for about 20 years. Fusion is a digital transformation consultancy. We help our customers find innovative ways to interact with their customers in this new kind of digital paradigm. Well, it's not so new anymore, is it? But ever evolving, let's use that word. Companies that are big and have been around for a long time are our customer base, and helping them think about different ways of interacting with their customers, maybe finding ways to delight their customers in ways their customers didn't even know that they wanted. And it all starts with data. When you think of Fusion, it's data, digital technology, and cloud. We say data first for a reason, because the data that you have, the data that you procure, the data that you convince someone to give you will provide you the insight that you need to really address your customer appropriately. That's me.
Thank you. Todd James, I'm the Chief Data and Technology Officer for 8451. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Kroger Company. As I think about what 8451 does, we are a data and science company that helps our clients understand the customer's path to purchase, and also helps shoppers simplify their experience, their shopping experience through data and science. Within my role, I have the technology and the science and the consumer research groups that support both our commercial businesses, such as Kroger Precision Marketing and 8451 Stratum, as well as providing the advanced analytic capability across the Kroger Company.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Wiegand. I'm a retail executive. I've had prior roles across planning, pricing, digital marketing, loyalty, along with data and analytics. I've had prior roles with Target, Barnes & Noble, Express, and most recently I was the Chief Data and Analytics Officer for Bed Bath & Beyond.
Great, well, thank you all. I think I have one slide, if we can advance to it there, which just provides a focus on, nope, it's not there. All right, well, I'll just read what it says. How's that? So I just want to set up the panel discussion for you guys. I'll share the abstract. Through the pandemic, data-driven digital insights have proven central to optimizing customer relationships, from finding, acquiring, serving, and retaining customers to predicting and delivering moments that matter. Data and analytics have emerged as an essential enterprise competency. This presentation will illuminate the marriage of digital and data and analytics to meet the moment and present emerging best practices that will ensure success. And so you've met our panelists. I just want to set up the discussion before we jump into our conversations for the panel members with this overview. As a result of the pandemic, I just read that part. Can each of you share, while understanding rapidly changing customer needs and supply chain lineages and pivoting the business model has merged as a key determinant in organizational success. For example, I'm aware of one organization that used ML-powered insights to determine which retail outlets to reopen during the pandemic that would be most profitable. The predictors of profitability would have been nearly impossible to determine without these insights, resulting in a risky trial and error process. And they actually navigated that with finesse and essence. It's a major retail brand that you all would be aware of. I'm sure everyone here shops their stores and online. Can each of you share an example of how your organization answered this clarion call to action with analytic insights that are delivering moments that matter to your customers? You want to start with that, Chris?
Yeah, sure. So for us, I would say I'd focus a little bit on the IoT products right now. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have smart home products for water. One of the products is called the Smart Water Shutoff. So it's an IoT device that you put onto your water system to use AI to monitor, find leaks. Leak damage is like a $9 billion problem a year in the United States for insurance claims. So it's a real big issue. So this product uses an app, and we are seeing that our customers are giving us feedback, or we had been seeing that our customers are giving us feedback that they don't really like the fact that we're charging them for data, where it was an upgrade for them to see all the fixtures analyzed by AI and all of that data given to them. So we wanted to respond to this. The problem was our AI was expensive our operating costs were expensive. So this is earlier when I had just joined the company. Essentially what we did is we took the AI that was built in the cloud and we simplified the algorithms, first of all, with losing very little quality and accuracy. Then we moved the algorithms to the edge. We moved them onto the customer's device. So we essentially removed the entire operating cost for training the algorithms. In addition, this allowed us to lower our costs and provide the customers with that data for free. So now you can see, okay, I just used my shower, I just flushed the toilet, whatever, and they really want to understand if they're saving water and how they're using water within their homes. So that was how we took that on.
And I want to go to you next, Todd, if you could give us some insight.
Yeah, and I'll caveat it. We've had a lot of discussions today about the tenures of the CDO. So I'm 11 months in the role, so I was not at 8451 when the pandemic hit, but I can speak to experience across two companies. One, I would say in both cases, the thing that really stuck out to me before I get to directly answering the question is very fortunate to have worked and be working for a company where when that situation hit, people were faced with tragedy, there was a pivot to taking care of the customer and taking care of the employees first. And I think that was pretty common across both of those companies. When I look at the reaction, and I'm seeing this in the rears coming in as we were coming out of a lot of the lockdowns, was what 8451 does is it uses large amounts of data to better understand that path to purchase. That helps our customers understand how to position their products in a way that is good for their objectives as well as for the ultimate customers, as well as to simplify the shopper experience. That's what 8451 does. They do that in a pandemic, outside of a pandemic. The data's there, and it's riding across what I would say is the best data asset in grocery retail, with data on 60 million households. That's 1 in 2 U.S. households, and about 2 billion in transactions per year. So you have a lot of data flowing across the system. And where 8451 played a role was to be able to identify, analyze changing customer behaviors, and simplify that path to purchase. So we're still doing it, but as you saw, a significant uptick in e-commerce and changing behaviors and patterns really put the Kroger company and our customers in a position where they were getting predictive insights that helped them navigate that situation during the pandemic.
Eric, would you like to share from your prior experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, one thing when the pandemic hit, it helped identify a lot of gaps that we knew existed as we were building our kind of data analytics transformation. Data that wasn't readily available, wasn't as automated. So we were faced with a situation where we were trying to pull a lot of manual things together just to get basic information. We were trying to figure out which stores were even open. All of it was really designed to try and figure out, well, where could the customer go shop? How could they shop? Where was our inventory? We expanded, stores that could be fulfillment centers. Well, what was there versus where it should be? So it was all designed with customer in mind to just try and get a messaging of, here's how you can get your product. Here's how we can start to do buy online, pick up in store, or where we can manually create curbside. I think where we started to, after we got through kind of our store closure process, really get to better understanding of the customer and how their behaviors had changed, who had switched channels, and who was now, kind of moved online where they had historically been a store shopper. And that let us start to build out kind of customer journeys and switch messaging. So that kind of shock to the system forced, a historically store-driven base to become digital very overnight.
Very, very interesting. Dave, Saj, would you like to add from other client experiences that we worked with through that period?
Yeah, I've got maybe one interesting one, because I think we talked a lot about changes in customer behavior, right? Because the pandemic kind of suddenly brought the human factor back into the equation. One interesting one that I think is kind of different way to look at things is foot traffic within like malls or stores, and then the changes of behavior, right? As the pandemic, the ascent of that pandemic, how did people change their behavior, as it kind of apexed, right? And then now the descent, how's that changing in terms of where they congregate, where they meet, where they talk. So that was an interesting one, because we saw a couple clients trying to implement some technologies around that. Things like IoT devices to kind of capture data points, there, Wi-Fi access points, customer apps, mall apps, right? Capturing all those data points and then applying some analytics to maybe do predictive and prescriptive type things, which in their turn resulted in like, maximizing how you promote, how you display, how you create displays, how you promote the product, advertise it, those kind of things. So really interesting way of looking at how that behavior changed, and then applying some kind of technology to help kind of, influence some of that. So.
Dave, on the integration side, I know we've been working with a number of accounts that have been really focused through the pandemic on creating points of integration in an API framework that's becoming a part of that glue to marry data and digital together. Would you like to shar a little bit?
Sure, not just on the data side, right? Obviously on the application side. So when you talk about API marketplaces, API first kind of methodologies and things like that have been a big deal. And we've certainly worked with clients, high-profile clients in the retail sector who have gone through a major transition as they've tried to think about, through the pandemic, how people are going to shop in the future and how to tie that, online, outside the store, inside the store experience, and going back and forth, and how those things can all be kind of done in a from a seamless kind of marketing experiential perspective, right? And it takes a lot of thought and architectural consideration and change, frankly, from kind of the legacy ways that we've done things to facilitate that in a seamless fashion, right? And we've seen some pretty significant success, and then you tie that with the idea that you can also use those, just like with the mall scenario that Saj talked about, which we worked on together, right? You tie that to the tracking of the shopping experience inside the retail setting as part of that customer journey, and all that data being used to kind of look at ways that people behave in the store in ways that you can track it that you never could before. I mean, you can recreate the customer journey through the data, right? So planogramming activities, those kind of things are going to change significantly as we move forward.
And I think one of the interesting points that sort of the pandemic forced us all to really grapple with was the reality that our organizations had to be customer first. We had to be customer centric. And the big agenda item initially became retaining the customers we have, and the best way to do that was to figure out how to serve them better, to serve their needs through a digital and a touch-free or touchless or frictionless experience. And I think Kroger did a great job there. I want to just add a little comment, because Todd, I know that you weren't there when this all happened. In 2017, Kroger Corporation made a decision to rewrite their business strategy, and their CEO and chairman, Rodney McMullen, pivoted the business strategy. They divested some of their convenience store chains as a part of the strategy, and the new business strategy made data and analytics the #1 business strategy for Kroger Company. Not technology strategy, not data strategy, but the #1 business strategy. So they embarked on significant investments in their data and analytics journey to pull their data assets together, realizing that online commerce and serving their customers in a more frictionless way and digitally was going to be the way of the future. They were prepared for the pandemic when it hit to really pivot quickly to provide a whole new array of engagement models to serve their customer. But it was because they really got focused across the business enterprise on the importance of data and analytics as a core capability. And they see themselves now more as a digital company, a data and analytics company, than they do that handles groceries and other services. They're a bank, they're a pharmacy, they're a manufacturer of food products, they're a distribution company, they're a retail outlet. They're service stations, gas and oil service stations. So they see themselves as really the data foundation and analytics capabilities being essential to their future and driving innovation. So that's just, I think, was really encouraging to see Kroger make that pivot. Todd, you want to add anything to that?
I just, it's interesting you say that, and you were going on the list, and it feels like we're this. You could keep going. Media company, insights company, venture fund. And I think the common thread across that is the investment and the focus across the business on data and analytics. And, I think at its core is, we can compete on data. I think another big component that we talk about, that data presents a value exchange. And I think as we get in some of the questions today and we talk about being customer centric, with that data, we're able to return significant value to the customer, and we're able to do it across what I would say are a lot of different industries in the end, as you were elaborating, Mark.
Yep. And in full disclosure, Kroger's my largest account in Cincinnati, so let's put that out there. The next thing I wanted to ask the panel here is, marketing came really hard and heavy at the data and analytics capabilities of the organization to really understand we're losing customers, we've got to try to retain, but how do we find new customers that really map up against our business model and that we can serve well? So what kind of challenges did the marketing organizations in your companies present to you during the pandemic as a result of the pressures they face? Chris, do you want to speak into that first?
Yeah, sure. So as a manufacturing company that just really is just beginning to break into direct-to-consumer, and just recently having joined the company, marketing is coming to me all the time, right? The #1 focus right now has been customer 360, and I know this is like the basics, but really getting customer 360, customer journey in place in a timely manner. So a CDP that has streaming technology, whether we do it in-house or, in this case, we use a third party, but just getting that customer information into the centralized location for all of our touch points, and identity resolution. If one of our customers is using the app and another one, and then they're later, somewhere else on our website, pulling that all together so we have the full customer journey. So that's what I was tasked with, and we did this through using a CDP platform.
I know you were talking, Eric, about the pivot that you guys made. Can you speak a little bit more to that whole marketing sort of impact strategy?
Absolutely, and I would say, luckily, I've had pretty good customer data at the past companies I've been at because we had a high penetration of loyalty, we had kind of single-use barcodes, so we were able to get really granular customer data. But at the same point, I think marketing effectiveness, so the attribution around it, the mix, the marketing budget had more and more pressure. How are we going to start to spend all of that became a key thing, along with really thinking about kind of loyalty and that customer frequency, because it's great if you can identify the customer, but if you can't get them to shop frequently enough, there's not a lot you can do to tailor that customer experience or that overall journey or kind of drive better personalization. So I think that overall journey and really understanding the different communication touch points so they can optimize their spend is where so much of the time was spent.
Well, and I would say also, if you think about the pressures you guys faced in the pandemic, as that onset and customers stopped coming to the store, the strategy to try to find how to replace that customer traffic online and other channels, or how to incent those customers to come back in those spaces, understanding their ability to consume was probably important too, and a different set of analytic pressures.
That was incredibly important at that time, but we're also going through kind of a rebranding segmentation strategy, thinking about kind of a new assortment. So, really building out new customer segments and personas and trying to pivot into acquiring those different groups while we retain the existing ones, and which tool sets were working across all of them became a big component of the work.
Todd, any comments on the Kroger side?
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of the comments that were here, but I'll take it in a little bit different direction too. One of the things that I saw coming out with marketing is, even when you were sitting on good data, even when you were sitting on rich data, there is a desire and a necessity for marketing and therefore for data to keep up with the velocity of business and the changes that are happening. So I have seen a tremendous push for faster access to data, access to diverse data that may or may not currently exist, that we either have to build or we have to acquire. I have also seen a shift, if you look at Kroger and its journey. The business continues to evolve. We are supporting markets where we don't have physical stores, and it's exclusively an e-commerce offering. And you say, that's great, it's the same data. No, the data comes from different sources. It's packaged in different ways, and you have to work to be able to expose it. There's been a lot of acquisitive activity that we're still working through. So I think the biggest shift, at least around the data, is making sure that we are providing enhanced data for better audiences and targeting, making sure that we are getting closed loop measurement at the speed of business, expanding our data sets to be able to move in the direction of new business offerings. Those tend to be the areas. The other one, and we'll probably talk about a little bit more, but the desire to make sure, and we've talked about customer journeys, are we looking at every aspect of the customer journey across irrespective modalities from a shopper perspective and personalizing that in an integrated way? And there's a big push for that as well. I think it's exciting, but I just listed a bunch of things. I think I listed 4. That's a lot of change. Yeah.
That's a lot of change. And it is exciting. I think I want to move into question 3, which really deals with kind of the foundation, right? So I think you guys have done a really good job of laying the landscape of the demands that are now coming, and they're coming at an accelerated pace. We keep hearing that throughout Symposium for insight and for analytics. And I think the C-suite is kind of now drank the Kool-Aid of understanding what gaps in the data and analytic infrastructure exist that really slow the organization down. And that they really need to pay attention to that, because the world isn't really going back fully to where we were pre-pandemic. I think we learned so much, going forward, that we've got to build on what we learned. And so when we think about that, having rapid access to the data necessary, including, internal, external, third-party data to feed analytics is critical, right? And now I think that's top of mind for everybody. And so approaches such as data fabric and data mesh are being touted as winners in this quest. What are the underlying technologies, and how are the organizations taking advantage of these technologies and frameworks? And what new approaches have emerged to compress the time required to access the needed data that we can really learn from and amplify going forward? Who wants to take that first? Sajid, go ahead.
You brought me right into the right topic there.
All right.
So I think there's 2 common things with data fabric and data mesh. There's 2 common, I'd say, capabilities or features that people want to get out of it, right? One is reduced time to market. That's the promise of that technology. And then the second one is broader access to more types of data, right? That's the whole capability around it. So faster time to market, and then being able to access customer 360, for example, right? That type of data. I think one of the key features that's kind of becoming a differentiator in those technologies is what I call kind of the API service model, right? So this is on the front end. If you think about APIs, if these technologies have API capabilities, that allows you to kind of tap into new types of sources, new sources of data that you can kind of bring in a new way, right? So that's fundamental capability that really kind of advances your capability to source information. On the back end, delivering data through these technologies, through APIs, now suddenly opens it up to new use cases for using that data, right? So applications, portals, mobile apps that now are trying to mix operational data with analytical data and combining all that together, right? So the API feature is the one that I think really stands out as something that really expands the use of this technology in a lot more use cases and kind of bridges the gap between operational and analytical capabilities.
Other comments on the question?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. I think, so I'll go back a little bit to your previous question because I think they're related, right? So, and I would broaden it from like demands from marketing to demands from the executives in general, right? So across business units, product owners, your CFO, whoever is your leader of transformation now or innovation or whatever, right? They all have a bigger demand for data than they ever have. And because there's more data available, right, and expectations on them to perform are higher, I always say that, it's either, you either kind of function from the perspective of you want to be right or you want to get it right, right? And if you want to be right, there's sometimes why you have to try to go down that path because the data is not available. You can't get access to it. You can't trust it, whatever it is. So sometimes it's on us as data professionals to provide that in a meaningful way. But sometimes it's on the individual because they've behaved that way for a long time, right? The reality is, if you use the data correctly, you want to get it right, right? So if you can get to it, and we use the vernacular, play it where it lies, right? When you talk about using data and getting to it faster, whether it's virtualization, mesh, or fabric, or whatever, right? If you can play it where it lies, you can A, use it quicker and get to the ROI faster, and B, you don't have the cost of moving it, right? Because it's expensive to move it, but you have to be able to trust it, right?
I want to extend on the API, then I'll take a little bit different direction, but I don't know how we keep up at the speed of business without extensible composable architectures enabled through APIs. We want that for two reasons. One, I think is very intuitive. We want technical flexibility, right? I want the ability to champion challenger, pull different applications in and out from an AI perspective as well as from a technology. But the thing we don't talk about a lot, business is changing. I also want business flexibility. So what I mean by that is I want to build my architectures in a way that not only allow me to swap out technologies, but give us flexibility to make different decisions about businesses, what we bring in, what moves out. And I think the API architecture goes along that. But Mark, the only extension I'd have on that, in addition to the underlying, as you get to the application, 3 trends I'm watching, and MLOps, democratization, control, end-to-end processing across the data science lifecycle. Frees up a lot of time for your data scientists, makes them more productive, makes them happier, and also brings consistency to the approach. Another area, you talked about it earlier, CDMPs. Partially, the reason I'm excited about that is they're being defined in a lot of different ways. Roadmaps are converging. Tends to be a combination of some diverse data set, some storage platform, maybe a clean room for integration, and then AI and algorithms to activate. But obviously the 360-degree values there, but I'm also very interested as you're seeing a convergence across vendors and their roadmaps, what kind of innovation comes out of that and how they settle. The third area is algorithmic, and it's really around focusing on NLP. With 80% of data unstructured, I still personally believe that that is going to be one of the number one enablers in shifting and enabling companies not to change process, not to automate, but to fundamentally change business models. So those are 3 other areas around the activation of data.
Chris, anything to add, or Eric?
Yeah, a little bit different perspective from the technology side. I think sometimes we miss upfront planning of, making sure everyone's aligned on the metric definition or the KPIs, and having those let you go a lot faster versus, hey, give me all the data. And the next question I typically go to is, well, what are we going to do with it? It's great that we're making it available, but, marketing partners, are you going to be able to use this tool set? You're planning direct mail, you've got a long lead time. Do you have all the creative and the content to be able to use? So we can take the technology push to get it all there, but is it really the investment? Are you getting the right return for it? And is there a skill set shift needed to make sure that we're thinking through kind of that end-to-end process versus just, yep, here it is, have at it. And I think that's where the operating model and some of the org and skill sets need to start to evolve.
Interesting. Chris, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just take a little bit different of an approach, and I agree with all of this, and I would want to get to where you all are. But for us, really, early stage, right? And for us, we need our data scientists to be able to dig into the raw data in its original form, and we need just a data lake. I mean, we need a cloud, in this case, we're using a cloud data warehouse, but we need a data lake and we need it populated quickly. So we're leveraging tools that, are literally, just within 30 minutes, you can have data from a source into your data lake, and we can make some decisions quickly. But what this also ends up allowing us to get to is really a single source of truth in a logical data warehouse where we can do the type of modeling that we want to do, such as causal modeling and inference. And maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, we're sticking to some of the basics first, and looking forward to having Fusion help us get to the next step.
So one of the things that I think this conversation has sort of, set on the table really pretty clearly is the importance of our collective success in building a sort of accessible and consumable data ecosystem within our organizations. And yet at the same time, I think we face challenges sometimes educating the C-suite executives who are non-technical about where those investments really need to be made and how we can scale that out, and their behaviors need to change in order to ensure that we can have adoption and consumption in the last mile once the insights and the analytics are created and they can drive change in the business. And so as we think about that, I want to sort of ask the next question of the panel. We've heard a lot this symposium about machine learning and deep learning capabilities as we embed those into delivering up insights at that last mile. And those require investments, right, along the lines of really making those capabilities scalable at the enterprise level. So what role do you guys see machine learning and deep learning playing in this quest for insights that improve the organization's ability to sort of execute new supplier identification or optimization in the supply chain, or acquire and retain new customers? What are you seeing trend-wise along the opportunities to implement ML and deep learning algorithms and models in the process, and then consume those? Todd, you want to take?
Yeah, I'll take that. I don't really see that as on the horizon anymore. I mean, that's present. It's in market. And I think it's something that is appearing across all aspects of the business. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to convert data to insights, insights to activation, doing it at velocity, doing it at scales. These algorithms allow us to do it. I think the power, and I can give you a few examples. I'll give you one, but the beauty of these algorithms allows you to optimize at a level that we haven't been able to in the past. So, just looking at Kroger's best customer communications, positioning offers to households that are relevant to them. I mean, we have 7 ML algorithms that run through about 30 billion different household to offer combinations per communication. They're driving relevant offers to the customers, so people are getting the offers that are relevant to them that they can act upon. The CPGs that are supporting us are having an opportunity to get their products positioned appropriately. And the net is, it's good economically for the company because you would not be able to sort that kind of optimization with a pencil and paper, even if the paper's green engineering pad like we had in college. You just can't do that at scale. It provides scale. And what I like about it too, it provides value. It enables us to drive hundreds of millions of dollars of savings for American shoppers every year and do it in a way that also benefits the economics of multiple constituencies. So can't do those types of optimizations without ML.
Other additions to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. There's so much around kind of that customer experience and optimizing the next best action or trying to drive higher conversion through better merchandising. So I agree with everything Todd said. I think the thing that I've seen in a couple of my past organizations where when some of that decision making is done by decentralized teams, you wind up with the digital team putting something on the website that you don't know exactly what's doing. The marketing team went out and got something for paid search, and everyone's coming back and saying it's driving all of this, and we're wind up, what is it really driving? We just have to rely on what kind of that partner is saying, and you don't get that end-to-end journey. So I think there's an aspect of, where does kind of that chief data officer, chief data and analytics officer start to play across looking through that whole ecosystem to really define what those goals and how are we measuring it, so you don't wind up kind of very fragmented with all of these different tools, not knowing how they play together.
Yeah, and I think that's really, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'll pick it up from there. I completely agree. I mean, what we're seeing is we didn't have my role 9-10 months ago, right? The CEO made a choice to just really elevate data. So for us, what we did is we centralized, and now we're using AI. We're using AI in a way that maybe many others are, but we're just getting started. What we're doing is, like I was saying earlier, causal inference. We're doing modeling, pulling from all the different sources, such as not only sales but ad spend, supply, every factor that really ties into our business, promotions, et cetera. But we're doing that, like I said earlier, through this logical data warehouse. As we enable each one of those data elements, we're adding it to our algorithm, and we're basically saying, all right, now we've got 3 components. We got promotions, revenue, and pricing, pricing. If we pull one of these levers, how does it impact revenue? And as we enable other data sources, we're just adding to that model. Now, again, we're just getting started, but at least we're delivering value along the way, right? So we're helping the business understand how all these different components, through modeling, impact our revenue. In the end, once we have ops and all of these components as a part of our model, we're really where we want to be, but that's where we're headed.
So I want to go to the next question, and this is kind of, it's an organizational spin on this topic. So data is one discipline, strategic data management, building the sort of the foundation. Digital is sort of that channel through which we can operationalize data, insight, and analytics, and serve the customer, serve our internal stakeholders better, and then the analytic capabilities provide those insights, and those pieces are coming together. So we've had the CDO role. We've had the head of digital, we've had the digital leadership role, we've had the head of analytics. And those 3 pieces, really, if we're going to look at value delivery, are really converging. It seems to be, anyway. Should the leadership be converging? So the question is, as a result, we're sort of accelerating time to value when those 3 play together in a Venn diagram that overlaps more fully. What are you seeing in terms of how that's improving organizational outcomes and alignment? And are your organizations moving down the path of bringing them together? And then that'll be a question for the audience as well, for the folks that are online watching the stream, to throw into the Q&A. But for the panelists, how are you seeing the convergence of those 3 disciplines within your operating models, or for Dave and Saj and the clients that we're serving? Dave or Saj, you want to start?
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we preach, right? I mean, that's how we go to market at Fusion, right? So we believe wholeheartedly that those things are converging, and they have to. And the reality is, when we go through and we kind of assess where an organization is from a digital and data maturity kind of perspective, if any one of those 3 things is out of whack with the other, you're going to struggle to get the success that you're looking to drive, right? And so your program will suffer from all kinds of political fraud, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to get you where you want to go. So I think it's really important to make sure that you understand where you are from a maturity perspective across all those disciplines, and I'll use the interdiscipline word for the disciplines within those disciplines, to know that they're all at the right level to support the goals that your organization has from a strategy perspective as you go to market. If not, it's just doomed, in my opinion.
Other comments?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a bias here. I don't understand how you can separate the data and the analytic component. I have both in my remit now. I had both in my remit at my prior firm. One is about the curation, the collection, and the manufacturing. The other is about the application. The more that you can make those intimate, I think the more you'll see a velocity across that pipeline. And there's more innovation in that space. So I struggle to see how we separate those. And to be quite honest, I wouldn't want to be in a role where I didn't have a remit for both. I think it would be very limiting. Back to your point on the digital, I think this is going to accelerate. I think you can harmonize the data and the analytics role. As you're looking along digital, it's really about where do you expose that applied analytics in customer and associate journeys and for other business purposes. So having very tight linkage there is important. I think agile frameworks done right help. I don't think it's always easy, but that's a point. Every model has friction, and I think that's a point of model when those roles are apart. But right now, I think you probably cross the point of too big a remit if you combine all of them.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It would be a little bit controversial with the panel on this topic. We have a number of customers, and you guys are probably seeing it. I'm curious from some comments. I'll pause here and let you guys comment into this. But a number of organizations are installing chief digital officers and beginning to roll the data and analytics functionality under that leadership, and that chief digital officer has a seat at the C-suite table. That's starting. I'm seeing that more and more happen. Curious about your experiences out there for the folks that are in the audience. What are you seeing? Anybody want to care to comment on that? No? Yes? Go ahead.
I was just telling him that
Let me run a microphone over to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I was just telling Ivan that in the company I work for, which is a pharmacy retail in Peru, that's exactly what happens. The chief digital officer has data analytics too. And the great benefit of it is that as a chief digital officer, we have e-commerce, we have digital marketing, we have digital products, and it's a great way to monetize and bring value to the table through data. So we don't have the challenge to keep selling the idea of data. We sell the idea of new business models or new new revenue streams through data.
And they're manufactured through data, is what you're saying in analytics. Mm-hmm. That's great. Anybody else? Any other comments on that question? Online, are you moderating? Somebody moderating the online question and answer?
Questions are not related to what you're
Okay. So
we got an example I can maybe talk through. It might be interesting. Again, kind of looking at it from a different perspective is, let's say, for example, one of our clients, is building, kind of a wearable device, for patients, right, and kind of collect a lot of data points about their health and their well-being and their statistics and all those pieces of it, and then be able to tie that all back into, through mobile apps or through workstations, pushing alerts, pushing analytics back into the visibility of people that can actually do the care of that patient, right? So actionability, and so that digital element of it mixed in with data and analytics together is kind of the culmination of all that, experience that you can kind of build, which actually then has an impact, on positively on the society and people, right? So I think that's what is also kind of causing this conversion, is this unique way of looking at the collection of all those pieces to deliver something new.
Well, I think, Todd, you spoke to this, but I think as you look at those three capabilities coming together, we're seeing really the emergence of a really opportunity to have a new business model, or new business models emerging out of that in traditional structures that really are built on those three pillars in the collaboration that's there.
One of the things, too, and I don't know if the rest of the board has a perspective, but the thing I keep wondering about in the back of my mind is we do have a convergence. You talked earlier, centralization. Is that a temporary? Are we focusing to flare this back out and embed analytics and digital throughout the business? I think we see someone doing the swing in the audience, so maybe that's the answer there.
You look at data mesh, right?
The fashion business, right?
Exactly.
See how I'm dressed? You can't accuse me of that.
I think that's data mesh, right? I mean, that's really the reality of data mesh. It's pushing that back out into, a broader, so it's not always centralized, but more of data as products that are kind of managed throughout the organization as opposed to centrally.
So we may need a different title for the symposium in 5 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, any other comments on that before I move to the next question? We were talking a little bit about embedded analytics. Can you speak to that? So can you describe embedded analytics and how these capabilities are raising the bar on customer engagement and satisfaction? And please provide a few examples of where this capability has provided differentiation and or competitive advantage for the operation.
I can jump in on my experiences because it was, something we were really trying to transform the operating model. So it's really, to me, about getting out of kind of those data silos where data and analytics is living over here, answering question of the day. My first kind of experience is trying to embed teams, turn too much into like, hey, can you build me this report? Can you give me this task? So there's a model that I, fully honestly haven't tested out, but more of a pod structure where you have the different data analytic capabilities in there. You likely have someone kind of working with your partners to translate the needs, setting the KPIs, aligning on the goals, but also, pushing the partner to utilize tools and think beyond where they are now and where new data analytic capabilities could take them. So, thinking about, hey, here's a whole new way of selecting an audience for marketing. Hey, here's a whole new pricing strategy you could think about. And I think if you can get that kind of embedded and that thought process going and work with your partners in that way, you could be able to move and drive a ton of value very quickly.
Chris, any comments from your perspective on that?
Yeah, you mentioned the pod, the concept of a pod. So what we've done is we've got agile pods really that are embedded within the business. So we've got a DTO, we consider that direct to owner sales, like similar to D2C. Pod, we've got an e-commerce pod, and we've got dedicated. It is a centralized org, but we have these dedicated analysts, from the centralized team to that pod. So allows us to deliver because of the dedicated nature of the resources.
Any other comments before we move on to the next question? All right. So the next question is, as you think about the future, so this is our last formal discussion. We'll open up for questions from the audience. But as you guys look to the future, so let's call it year 2030, okay? Thinking out there. What pearls of wisdom or best practice recommendations would you leave our audience with on this journey post-pandemic to really accelerate the consumption of data and the value contribution of data and analytics capabilities within the digital experience space? What do you see as you look to the future that we'll call those critical success factors, if you will, for success in the journey?
Yeah, happy to start. I think there has been a lot of, when we get to the application side of data around analytics, there has been a lot of talk around strategic use cases. There's value to them. What we do has to be tied to business and economic value. I also think there's a drawback to that guidance. Tends to drive point solutions that aren't integrated. They fit well into a sales model for someone coming into the organization. Let's do a use case and we get out. I think they're very good at the early stage of an organization on its AI and analytics journey. But I think the opportunity for us is to start thinking of reusable, AI exposable, or API exposable AI capabilities. And if you look at it, we talk about a process infrastructure, we talk about a technology infrastructure. We really haven't created the vocabulary around an algorithmic infrastructure that sits between those, that serves up analytic capability on a reusable basis, on a highly customizable basis, embedded into processes and customer journeys. I think that's where this is headed. I have proof points. We built this out at my last company. We're working towards that in areas now. Most companies around their personalization capabilities, if you step back, are already trying to get there. but it does cause you to start to think differently about how you want to structure your teams, how you want to approach the marketplace, how you want to govern your algorithms, and how you want to advance that capability. It's a different mindset than I think a lot of the legacy marketing analytics and BI shops that analytics teams have grown out of.
Eric, what do you see in the future?
Yeah, I came at this from a kind of a very specific retailer lens, and I think there's going to be kind of a divide where, the retailers that make the change in the investment in the budget, the skill set, the operating model, and all the technology are going to be really successful, especially as you look at kind of the next 24 months and probably more consumer challenges and headwinds and all that could be coming. And I think there's going to be a group of companies that starts to pull back the investment in this area because they're going to look at it as a line item technology investment. And I think those companies are really going to start to fail quickly, especially with kind of the state of the economy at the moment with any inflation and consumers maybe pulling back on discretionary spend. So, I think there's going to be a group that really start to pull back on this, and ultimately it's going to just lead them to faster decline.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing I'd mention is just having a data strategy. Having a roadmap. Again, we're coming earlier stage, really just having a roadmap for where we're going that's going to provide value to the company. Looking at the company's strategic initiatives as laid out by the executive team, and then using that to build out that roadmap to take action. The second area I would say, the second area is really to focus on making your data what I call fair, and I preach this throughout the company. Everyone's heard this way too many times in the company, but findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Really, your data scientists can't do anything unless they have that type of access. A data catalog, access, standardized access to the data, and interoperability, so that we can work across all the data sources, whether it's graph, whatever that solution may be. And really, the third area is around execution, and for the data science tied work. It's kind of oxymoron in a way to say, like, deliver value iteratively, using machine learning and data science. Some people think it is, but you need to deliver value, right? So taking the bits of information you have and iterating on it, in regular sprints, and delivering some actual value, learning from each iteration. The basics, pretty much.
Dave. Crystal ball.
Ditto, right? And I don't even know where I'm supposed to be tomorrow, let alone what 8 years from now is going to look like, right? So, but what I will say is this: I think 8 years from now, some of the fundamental things that matter today or make a difference today will make a difference then, right? So the technology will be way different, and we'll be talking all kinds of different words and terms and all those kind of things, right? But the reality is, data quality and the fundamentals of governance and stewardship and all those things will still matter, because you still have to be able to trust your data no matter how it's being harvested and delivered, right? And the other thing I'll say is the best organization in the world's, and today they don't, some still do, they won't operate in discrete cycles. From a go-to-market perspective, they'll operate in infinity loops, right? Where it's a constant churn of, I have an interaction with a potential customer or a customer, I gather data from that interaction, I harvest it, I get to know them better, I apply all the data sources that I have at my will to fundamentally change my perception of who they are, including the behavior that I just saw them do. And then I'll go through that cycle and offer them something that gets them to interact with my brand again. Another set of data, I'll get closer to them, I'll get closer to them, I'll get closer to them. I think that the world is going to operate in ever increasing kind of smaller cycles from that perspective. And when you talk about like next best action and things like that, right, those things will happen in nanoseconds in the future, right? I mean, I think it's incredibly important to operate under that paradigm going forward.
So Saj, take us home, but I think they just said that data mesh and data products are going to be the wave of the future. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. And by the way, people do call me a wise guy, but it's usually for different reasons.
There's this one-liner.
Yeah, I have to throw one out there. Yeah, I think for me, I think maybe look at it from an architecture viewpoint. I think kind of to your point, I think what I would say number one is what I'm seeing is companies are realizing is be pragmatic about your architecture. There's no perfect architecture out there. You got to find one that is going to be pragmatic in your ecosystem and can be sustainable in your ecosystem. And sustainable meaning people, technologies, integration with what you have, all those kind of things, right? You got to find that right balance. And don't lean one way or the other, right? Don't pick a single platform to achieve everything, but don't go best of breed on the other end, right? You got to find that right balance there. So that's number one. Second, I'd say is when you talk about data management, look broadly across data management, maturity. You need to mature across all those facets to really make an impact, right? You can't just deliver a report or an ML model outcome, right, without addressing data quality or governance and stewardship, all those kind of things, right? So you got to mature all those pieces of it. And the third one I'll say is that if the need for customer 360, that voice becomes louder in your organization. The only thing I've seen with organizations, they're realizing this, is that they need to look at a holistic customer data strategy, right? Don't just look at a pointed solution to solve a particular need for marketing or sales, right? You got to look at that holistic data strategy. And what I mean by that is looking at existing platforms you have. Am I leveraging those correctly? Am I doing the right things in my HR system or CRM system or all those pieces of it where customer information sits, right? Those kind of decisions, really just being smart about where I invest, right, in data strategy and make that accomplishment.
Thank you guys for that wisdom. We're not over. I'm gonna open it up for questions, Peter. And maybe we'll start with just one from the virtual audience.
I gotta get close to you so I can be heard.
Okay, I don't know. So those are questions. Okay. Let's see. Follow up to the data mesh question. What exactly is new here? API's been around for years, as is the need for analytical and operational data to integrate. That's the question. What exactly is new here?
Do you
I
want
want you to answer it.
You want
We want you to answer it in one line.
Mike's not working.
One word.
Yeah, no, I think I think what's different is it's an organizational change. It's not a technology problem. I think that's where people are confused with data mesh. Data fabric is a technology solution. Data mesh is an organizational element, right? So this is about transferring ownership and capabilities to broadly across your organization as opposed to a centralized IT function, right? It's a combination of both. You got to find the right thing. That's what's different.
Okay.
It's not a technology enabler.
I know there's questions in the room, but I'm going to ask one more from the virtual audience. This is a great concept, customer IQ. Can the same framework be used for product IQ or vendor IQ?
That's a good question. I would fundamentally say that the basics apply, right? But the approach might be a little bit different. You know what I mean? It may be more like product IQ is, I think, is different than, so it's a more research intensive kind of function than a lot of the customer IQ activity is in general today. I mean, because customer IQ happens on a different
behavioral
pace. You know what I
products
mean?
yes, it's behavioral. Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the velocities are different. I do think you see a little bit of that now based on if you look at structures of data lakes.
Yeah, right.
And how companies organize around their data. You see a bit of that happening now.
What was the other one besides product?
Supplier.
Vendor IQ.
I'm not a supplier guy. So I'm not a supplier guy, so you guys can answer that.
But I mean, at the end of the day, fundamentally, if you get it, devil's in the details, and I wouldn't, things are going to be different. It's about intimate knowledge about a particular domain, be it customer, be it supplier, be it product. Generally, that's a good thing.
You have a question in the room?
Not a very
Can you hear me? Around the idea of centralized, decentralized, right? What we're seeing, especially in big enterprise accounts, the right answer of the more mature companies, right, is they have centralization around their data and the idea of data hubs versus data mesh, right? The data hub contains all your core data around, product, employee, customer, sales, financial data. And that really gives you look at what marketing, the question about what marketing asks for, right? And what they need is a truly 360 degree that requires all that data. It's not only the customer, but what products did they buy? How much did they pay? Those kind of things. So kind of the platform teams that enable that centralized function, and then the edge teams, right, the business units and folks that use that data, really driving the value based on high value use cases, but they're all subscribing to the data hub that is well-managed, quality data, trusted data, and then they take that and they subscribe to that, and they do what they do based on business knowledge and high-value use cases and that kind of thing. So it's a hybrid model of platform teams with the core data that drives the enterprise, well-trusted, well-understood, high quality, and then the edge teams that subscribe to that, various business units, might be marketing, it might be, whatever, that then subscribe to that. And they then, through the data mesh, they might add other outside data from the market, that kind of thing, and drive high value in that direction. So it really is, centralized with the edge teams leveraging that in a meaningful way to drive true business outcomes and high value. That's kind of what we see as the best kind of implementation of that centralized, decentralized model.
Thank you for that comment. And with that comment, we're out of time. So can I have a great round of applause for the panel here today? Thanks. You guys did a great job. And
150 online, too, so it was a pretty good group. So thank you guys.
Thank you online. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for taking the time to come up here and do this.
Thanks. Oh, for those here in person, you can save me from having to eat one of these cupcakes at the Fusion Alliance table. And they're from, where are they from? Modern Pastry? They're probably really, really good. So help yourself over at the Fusion Alliance. That's mine. I get to have this one. Oh, you get to have that one. All right.
Thanks, guys.